I've never been a dreamer. I've never really dreamed about things. I just did things on a day-to-day basis and had certain things I wanted to achieve. And it's never been a dream.
What did you want to achieve with the New York Shakespeare Festival?
Well, I wanted to be effective in the arts. In other words, do something that was meaningful. I just didn't want to be in show business. I'm not interested in just putting on plays. I'm interested in being part of a large design, part of a societal design, where the cultural things that exist in our society are as crucial, I always say, as garbage collection.
I knew when I met you, I couldn't forget you, so how could I let you?
With me is a man who has been described as the most vibrant force in American theater. His company, the New York Shakespeare Festival, performs the classics in Central Park every summer, free of charge to the public. He has put on more than 100 plays by American writers. The Original Hair, Sticks and Bones, Colored Girls, and A Chorus Line. He has a very unique career. He's set his own goals, always on his own terms. He's embattled, outspoken. The man I've just described is Joseph Papp.
I thought you were going to say the man you just described was Beverly Sills.
We have a lot in common, but we have to draw the line somewhere.
It applies to you, too.
Yes, it does. I read, obviously, a lot of material about you. A great many things I already knew, a great many things I'd never known before. But I was struck by an amazing similarity in the...
Well, I think there's certain issues in the arts, particularly in the question of European influence on the arts, which has made a lot of Americans very snobbish and thinking that things that are European are superior. You think that they've gotten over that by now, but they haven't, see.
Well, it's true that we have suffered from an inferiority complex.
I know that for a fact because we had brought Shakespeare to England. We brought Coles to Newcastle a number of times. We brought Much Ado About Nothing to England, which was a great success, and just recently a new work based on The Taming of the Shrew with Meryl Streep and Raul Julia, called, we call it, just for a joke, Kiss Me Petruchio. And we had scenes from the play up here in Central Park, and plus comments from the audience. It was quite a lively sort of documentary, 1 hour, and it was extremely successful. It was interesting to hear the critics, the English critics, say that British actors can learn from American actors the kind of energy and the kind of imagination that goes into this kind of acting.
Nay, come, Kate, come. You must not look so sour.
It's my fashion when I see a crab.
Why, here's no crab, and therefore look not sour.
There is, there is.
Then show it me.
Had I a glass, I would.
What, you mean my face?
Well aimed for such a young one.
Now, by St. George, I am too young for you.
Yet you are withered.
'Tis with cares.
I cannot.
Nay, here you, Kate, in sooth you scape not so.
I chafe you if I tarry you.
No, not a whit. I find you passing gentle. 'Twas told me you were rough and coy and sullen, and now I find report a very liar, for thou art pleasant, gamesome, passing courteous, but slow in speech,
Yes,
yet
well,
sweet as springtime flowers. Thou canst not frown, thou canst not look askance, nor bite the lip as angry wenches will, nor hast thou pleasure to be cross in talk. But thou with mildness entertains thy wooers, with gentle conference, soft and affable. Why does the world report that Kate doth limp? Oh, slanderous world, Kate!
You know, there was a time where if you want to hear Mozart, go to Vienna, and if you want to hear real Italian opera, you have to go to La Scala. And of course, that's not true anymore.
No, it's not true at all. It's become...
I mean, either an art form, it's an international art form, or it's not. And certainly Shakespeare, the classics, they belong to the world, not just to the British actor.
We have a lot of interesting directors, and there's a very stimulating way in which we do plays. I compare it to countries throughout the world. I mean, there's nothing as far as the theatrical world. There's nothing compared to the United States, particularly New York area.
When did you become active in the theater, or even the least amount of interest?
I started to become interested in the theater when I was aboard a flat top in the Navy in World War II. And we used to put on shows, and mostly variety shows. And I didn't know very much about the theater per se. I didn't know that it went back to the Greeks, at least the Western theater. I didn't know very much about the whole tradition in America. And I guess it wasn't until I got out of the Navy and went to study under the GI Bill in California, I became aware that there was a man called Aeschylus, there was a man called O'Neill, and later I found out there are people called David Rabe and Ntozake Shange and Thomas Babe. The writers are writing today, Sam Shepard.
Well, how did you, when you got off the flat top,
Got off the boat, so to
got
speak.
off the boat, you said you studied under the
Well, I
GI
see.
Bill.
I felt very good after World War II. I thought the world was going to be a lovely place to be in.
Yeah.
Everything was fine. We had defeated the enemy of fascism was down.
Yes.
And I thought it was going to be very fine from now on in, and I was feeling good. And I went to California, and there was a school there called the Actors Lab, which was made up mostly of people who had come from the original group theater. And they were doing a production called Volpone at the time, which I'd never seen a live classical production before, and I was just taken with it. And I tried to get in, and
As an actor?
As an actor. I competed there, and they accepted me. I didn't know why. I had no real experience at all. And I began to study acting and directing and writing, and I suddenly became enamored with this form as a form of expression. I'm
Still as an actor?
I've always been interested in the process of acting, but the reason I couldn't be an actor, even though I've done some acting, is because you have to be extremely vulnerable. You have to be a good actor, and I knew what it meant to be a good actor. Because your whole life had to ride on your own being, because you are the instrument. Well, you know that as a singer. There's nothing else.
You use the word vulnerable. Do you think you're vulnerable?
Oh yes, I definitely am. And I like people around me that are vulnerable. And whenever I find some sort of containment that people put around themselves, or some sort of barrier, I find it necessary for me to chip away at it, to some way get through to the person. Same thing is true in the work itself. Try to get through to the essence of things, the core of things.
And you've chosen to do this through the theater.
It is the most forceful expression for me. I can't do anything else, because people say, well, you've been so successful in this, if you'd been somewhere else, you'd be a very successful politician or whatever. Wrong. This is the only form which I feel I can articulate my own feelings about life and my own viewpoints, and even be effective in terms of society, do something about society.
Change it.
Influence it. I don't know if we could change it, but at least play a role where you're actively engaged in what's happening in the world, and your world.
When did you form the New York Shakespeare Festival?
Well, actually, I think it was around 1954. After I had tried this and tried that, I'd done an Equity Library show, and I'd started a small theater up in the Catskills, you know, had a small one-act play theater. I felt I needed a home, a place that I can go to every day, and every profession sort of had that. People in our professions don't seem to have that, and I began to look for a place, but I was fortunate. Someone asked me to direct a play in this basement on the Lower East Side on East 6th Street. It was called the Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. It was a 110-year-old church. And I'd done a play there, and I said, it looks like a remarkable small Elizabethan theater. I tried to fix up this church and make it into a theater. It was kind of rotten, you know, it was crumbling. So I read in one of the newspapers that there was a theater in the Bronx that was being dismantled. It was an old vaudeville house. And the man was selling chairs, theater chairs, and I was trying to get 200, so I picked up this old truck, and I got 3 guys from the neighborhood. 2 were drunk, and 1 was just barely making it, and we rode up to the Bronx. It must have taken 3 hours to get up there. It was a very rickety old. And I come into this theater, and this man is there, and he says, I said, I'd like to buy 200 of these chairs. He says, well, $35 a chair. I said, I'll give you 50 cents a chair. He said, okay, I'll take it. He says, but you have to take them out. And we finally loaded them into this truck. And it took us, again, hours to get downtown, and finally I got them into the theater. And I decided to screw them into the floor. Well, the first time people sat in them, it went way back, and the screws, because the floor was so rotten, they just fell back. About 14 people fell back. But from that day on, the chairs were always tilted backward. People would watch the show sitting back this way, you know.
Easy to fall asleep.
Well, no, they couldn't get out of their chairs. It was very difficult.
A little bit of each. What were you putting on?
We were doing Shakespeare there. I was mostly interested. I did an evening called Shakespeare and Marlowe. Did Richard II and Edward II.
How long did you stay in the church?
Well, actually about 2.5, 3 years. It was kind of a dismal place in one sense, because it was cold all the time, and when we'd have to pay for the heat, and in the middle of Juliet's speech, we'd always hear
Clanging.
clanging, and she'd think I was doing that, this woman playing Juliet. I really didn't like the performance that much.
When did
Then we
you-
moved out in the park. See, I just
You
decided...
mean you went right from the church to the park?
Well, I went to not Central Park. That was
No.
uptown. That
Yes.
was that was Broadway. I went to a park called the East River Park, which was on Grand Street and East River Drive. We did Julius Caesar and The Taming of the Shrew with Colleen Dewhurst in the lead of it. And
I'd like to see that today.
she was just gorgeous in it. And the people, people just came in great numbers. We had no advertising. People would just come to the community. And people would listen to the plays, and there were numbers of Jewish women there. I remember that time they used to really participate and say, "Watch out, he's going to kill him." "Oh, that's a shame. Shouldn't have do that." Commenting through the entire thing. And it was all very much alive, almost like an Elizabethan audience.
What was the next step?
I began to go to foundations, try to raise some money to pay actors. I was trying to get enough money to pay actors, which was the off-Broadway minimum at that time, which was $30 a week. And I managed to raise that first season about $35,000 from several foundations, which included the Doris Duke Foundation, New York Foundation, several of those, and money I raised around. I began to feel the need to subsidize these things. I built a portable truck, a trailer truck, 35-foot, in which we'd build a stage which would unfold. And I had no vehicle to pull it, a tractor to pull it, so I went to the city and I met this man who was Deputy Mayor Stanley Lowell, and he finally arranged for me to get a sanitation truck to pull this thing around the city. But that truck just couldn't make it. I mean, it kept going over to the side. You see it coming around the corner, everybody would go, "Oh!" swing around. And we'd go from place to place, and the truck began to fall apart. I barely managed to get it back to Central Park, and we let it lay there, because we had opened that season with Romeo and Juliet
Where?
in Central Park.
Oh,
There was no Delacorte Theater then. We just had this mobile unit.
And did the city just allow you to drive in and perform?
Well, they kind of allowed me. I just drove in one night without them knowing it, and there was a cop on horse. Came in about 2 o'clock in the morning. I had no permit. And we brought this truck in, just set it up, and there was a cop on a horse, and he saw me go by. He kind of looked at me kind of strangely. But he must have assumed nobody would come in with a huge 45-foot platform trailer without a permit. He just sort of kind of gazed and looked kind of awed, and then I just waved to him, and we went on.
So now we have the New York Shakespeare Festival. Do we? In Central Park already?
Yes, more or less. No
More or
money,
less.
but we're in Central Park.
All right, so how do we get over to all these Broadway hits? Hair, a chorus line, how did that happen?
I've always wanted to do new plays. I mean, I just don't want to live on Shakespeare alone. In fact, Shakespeare cannot be alive unless there's his counterpart in contemporary plays, because you can't hang on to what you call a Shakespearean style. There is no such thing. I mean, what are you going to do? Something of Restoration in the Elizabethan period? You have to know how to handle some of the weapons, and how to wear clothes in a proper way, but there's no affectation, and how do you speak and so forth. And where do you get the impulses for doing things? Through the modern theater. You must do contemporary works in order to play classics. You can't just be a classical company. There's no such thing. Because each classic must justify its being done in our time. Otherwise, it's a museum piece.
Is it at this point that you're very involved with American playwrights?
I've always been interested in American playwrights, see, but I was interested in creating a theater, and I was very interested in the classics as the form, because Shakespeare was a marvelous base on which to build a theater, because the demands that were made both for actors and directors, and even for writers to learn how a scene is put together, how Shakespeare makes something move in a play. He's one of the greatest teachers of all.
But Joe, somewhere in the back of you is this idea to bring theater to the public.
That's true. Yes, and I'm interested in the general public, not so much in the elitist kind of theater. Although I believe in a certain elitism in the creation of art, I don't believe in dispensing it that way. I mean, a crowd of people can't create art, but a crowd of people can appreciate art.
She is my goods, my chattels. She is my house, my household stuff, my field, my barn, my horse, my ox, my ass, my anything.
I love it. I love when they boo and hiss like that. I love it when they boo and hiss Petruchio, because that means that Petruchio is making them feel something. The feeling in the park is that you're playing with and for your family. You are putting on a play for these 2,000 relatives that came to see you. And here I am putting on a play for you, and okay, you dig it, you don't dig it, we'll argue. If you want to argue, we'll argue, fine. If you want to boo me, great, and I might boo you back, but it's all done within a context of love. That's the beauty of it, you see?
The fact that we're giving these performances free in Central Park was my concern with the public. I felt that people shouldn't have to pay. They should be free to the public. Because as a boy, I used to go to the park, listen to the Goldman Band, which I used to love. It took me a long time to like strings because I'd been so spoiled by the brass. I've loved brass only. My father loved bands, you know.
Still, it's a dreamy and a dreamer's idea to present the classics for public consumption without charging them anything.
Well, people say that, you know, and I've never been a dreamer. I've never really dreamed about things. I just did things on a day-to-day basis and had certain things I wanted to achieve. And it's never been a dream.
And what did you want to achieve with the New York Shakespeare Festival?
Well, I wanted to be effective in the arts. In other words, do something that was meaningful. I just didn't want to be in show business. I'm not interested in just putting on plays. I'm interested in being part of a large design, part of a societal design, where the cultural things that exist in our society are as crucial, I always say, as garbage collection.
I've been reading something, again, that sort of parallels our careers, because many years ago I performed a Tosca, which was a modern dress Tosca, where instead of the lady being in an empire dress, I wore a strapless thing that was cut down to here and slid up to there, and instead of scarpia with a ruffled thing in the front and knickers and hosiery, appeared as somebody somewhat resembling an SS trooper. And we modernized it.
Mm-hmm.
It was in some areas highly praised, and in some areas it was crucified as not having any integrity in presenting Mr. Puccini's Tosca.
Here's the way I feel about that. It all depends what you do and how you do it. You can preserve the integrity of a work and change its style, change its time. As far as the music is concerned, you have a different problem. You do have a score.
Certainly.
I can still change things even within a score if you want to, but people who've heard that year after year can say, don't tamper with it. I was directing an opera, believe it or not, at the Peabody Institute some years ago, and it was Idomeneo. I mentioned this, I think, at one point to you, Mozart's. Well, I felt the libretto was so boring, and the man who was the conductor, in fact, he had founded the City Opera.
Halash.
Yeah, Laszlo Halash.
Right.
Who was a very impassioned man and quick-tempered. And I said, I don't like this thing. I said, I'm going to rewrite it. He said, you can't do that. I said, well, I didn't want to do it then. He says, well, all right. He says, what are you going to do? So what I did is I wrote my own libretto. I used the same form. But it required the changing of some music. In plays, they're a greater opportunity. I mean, I did a Hamlet some years ago called The Naked Hamlet, which I absolutely shattered the play. But I shattered it. In other words, I broke the entire form of the play and let it come down in different places, and did it in a kind of comedic way, mischievous way. It happened, incidentally, at the time my father had died. And the play Hamlet at that time meant to me, because it means something else to me now. It's about a young man who never becomes a father. He always remains the son. That's not what the play is about. There are many things the play is about, but that aspect intrigued me because I'm no longer a son. Once your father dies, you are the father, and your own children become your sons and daughters. And it struck me very much in that play. I have 5 other productions of Hamlet done in an entirely different way. The play is so powerful and has so much richness, you can twist it 14 ways, and you can't kill it. You can only kill it by being unimaginative and being uninteresting, being dull, and being afraid, or trying to be correct.
To be or not to be? That's the question. Whether it is noble in the mind to suffer the slings and the arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of trouble and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep. And by that sleep to end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flushes air too. 'Tis the consummation divinely to be wished, to die, to sleep, to sleep. Perchance to dream, there's the rub. For what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's a respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, the spurns that patience merit of his unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. For who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have and fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and the moment with this regard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
Do you do this just to put it in a different perspective?
No, it's never for its own sake. It's an attitude you have at a particular time of your life toward a great work of art, and it keeps changing. Right now, I see it as a woman, multisexual, and begin to see a whole different kind of thing.
Didn't Judith Anderson tour playing Hamlet?
No, she just did it as a woman, but not as a transvestite.
Oh, I see.
See, actually, the character is split.
You should have invited me to that one.
Are you interested in playing the role?
No, no. I don't think I can make it. I haven't got enough high notes.
That's fine.
Anyhow, is the New York Shakespeare Festival a non-profit organization? How do you support it?
Well, we raise money. We've been supporting it the past 5 years through the profits that we've accrued from a chorus line.
Uh-huh.
Actually, a chorus line started like most of the new plays that start at the Public Theater. It's sort of a workshop. There was no script. There was nothing. There was Michael Bennett, who came to me, and who I'd known. I was trying to get him to work on something with me, but he said no. He has a lot of old tapes that he's gotten. He's gotten a lot of dancers together, call them gypsies, and just talked far into the night and recorded it on tape. And he said he's interested in doing musical. Well, we talked about this. I listened to 40 hours of tapes, believe it or not. And there was some extraordinary material there. I mean, the material was just devastating. And it just knocked me out. Also, the whole beginnings, the whole investigation of homosexuality was implicit in this thing, why young men went into dance and so forth and so on. And the relationship of children to their parents. You see the influence of parents on children, what it does to them, why they go into this field. But it was a quite remarkable documentary piece of work. And that it evolved. We just worked on it and developed it and became very successful.
What's ahead for you, Joe Papp?
What's ahead for me?
Yes. Apart from the fact that you're going to direct an opera for me one of these days.
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll look into it.
What's ahead?
The thing I'm mostly interested in now, it's going to be working on, is a relationship with Washington, D.C. See, the plays we open here are very interesting plays, and I run them for 7 or 8 weeks, and then I close these plays. They're by new American writers, and they need an extended life. And some of them are not right for Broadway. I mean, there's no audience for some of those plays, but they're good plays. And they may be right for Washington, maybe right for another city, because the audiences there are a little more accepting of the work.
Do you find that?
Yes, they are. And because there's very little, we have a plethora of cultural things here in New York. I mean, there's so many. You don't know which show to go to, which play to go to, which movie to go to, which television show to watch. You know, there's so much. But once you get outside of the New York area, there's not much. So people are grateful, more grateful for some of the things that we just give away or just lose after a short period of time. So I'm very interested in that relationship with the Kennedy Center.
Now, your summer season is over. When does your fall season begin?
Oh, we're in rehearsal now for 3 plays, and we're having 3 more. First play is called The Art of Dining by a woman, Tina Howe, whose work I produced last year. And we have a new play by Beckett.
Is this going to be one of your integrated plays?
No, that's not integrated. The integrated work that we're doing is an adaptation of Bertolt Brecht's Mother Courage.
Oh, who's doing that adaptation?
Ntozake Shange, the author of For Colored Girls, and she also has a production now running at a theater called Spell No. 7. But she's adapted it and changed the period to after the Civil War, so that we have a huge mix of nationalities and races there. There'll be black, Chinese, Oriental, Asian Americans.
How many plays do you do in the course of your season?
Do about 25, maybe 30 sometime.
And how long do they run? Are they in repertory?
Well,
or?
no, they run, and some run for longer, some shorter, some become successful and move elsewhere.
Do you have a basic company?
No, we don't have a basic company, but I think eventually we will have a company.
A repertory company.
Yeah, but even that will change. It's not going to be holding a company together for years and years at a time, because if you want good actors, you can't keep them forever.
Like a hazel twig
is straight and slender and as brown in hue as hazelnuts and sweeter than the kernels. Oh, let me see thee walk. Thou dost not halt.
Go, fool!
What other plays are you doing?
Then we're a new play by Thomas Babe called Salt Lake City Skyline, which is about Joe Hill. Interesting play. Joe Hill was a labor leader that was killed in Salt Lake City by the copper bosses, they say. At the time. That's the song. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night. You know that song?
No.
It's a very famous labor song.
See, I got you to sing.
I know, but as far as I'll go.
Got a particular favorite American playwright right now?
Listen, it's like saying you have a particular favorite child, because there were 4 or 5 playwrights now that around me that I'm very fond of.
Do you see any new one coming on the horizon?
Yes,
that's
I do. In fact, we're doing a play, a young writer, whose name is Peter Parnell. It's called The Sorrows of Stephen, which is now playing at the Public Theater. It's a comedy, but I think he's going to be a very first-class writer.
Would you be doing any directing?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's just, I'm becoming very contemplative now these days.
Oh, dear.
Very thoughtful about things.
That's a change.
Well, I guess in order to stay alive in the creative world, in any world, you must change.
Thank you. This is Beverly Sills.
Funding for this program has been provided by grants from Manufacturers Hanover Trust Company. Additional support has been provided by the Nate B. and Francis Spingold Foundation and by the members of 13.
I knew when I met you I couldn't forget you, so how could I let you pass by? And now at the end of the day, I guess I'm just lucky that way.